I'm telling
they
you
are
10
only
millimeters.
existing in them.
If I say I'm telling you 10 millimeters of this so drugs and not, and then you bought a bottle and you met only 5 millimeters there.
Yes.
For God's sake, it is your
Why
right
should
to
you
ask
come
me
out in the
questions
market in the first place?
and say, look,
Why
you said you were selling 10 millimeters. What I got in there was just 5 millimeters.
There should be compliance. The agencies of government are supposed to make sure they do not come out in that substandard.
Do you know how many products and services are produced in this country on a daily basis?
What are they doing with the money they appropriate? It's their duty.
Is it possible to monitor all those things?
Of course.
Hold on.
I
wait.
didn't think so.
Are you implying that because there are so many products that are brought forth every day in this country?
So they should not
Are you implying that the government agencies should not?
No, I am not saying that. What I'm saying is this, that this consumer also ought to be vigilant when they are purchasing goods and services. It is not just enough to leave everything to government and say, look, I have a government somewhere in Abuja, I have in Alausa, who must ensure that I get value for my money. It doesn't happen anywhere in the world. It is your right, you must enforce your right. You see, the principle of law is that the law does not help the indolent. If you are indolent or sleeping on your right, the law does not avail you.
The consumer has always been the
Constitution, I think there's a portion of the Constitution that says the primary purpose of government is to protect
the security
of the citizen.
So
you are saying that your welfare is not...
It is not to a very large extent. It is. So to that extent, I would say consumer is not wholly protected. But I must give it out to some few, I'm not saying all, like some few government agencies, parastatal, that are doing their work. Like today, we all know that if you walk into an airport, you want to travel and buy a ticket and maybe something happens. Because of what has been put in place by the agency of government that regulates that, you could go to any of the desks in any of the airports, but most Nigerians are not aware to go and...
I think you are not getting... I think you are
getting what?
I give you an example.
So there are agencies...
When you create a government agency as a regulator and all that, have you forgotten there are several layers of government institutions that regulate some of these things?
Like,
I give you an example. If you are a medical doctor,
okay,
you cannot admit, if you are not a medical doctor, for example, you cannot administer certain injections.
I'm aware.
So this is a level of regulation.
Yeah,
is it not?
Of course.
And then you also have the Nigerian Medical Association and all that, which also does some level of regulation.
Of course.
And then you have organizations like NAFDAC.
Okay.
You have the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria.
That's right.
Are you saying that?
They have their specific... This pharmaceutical has to do with
what I'm saying is
drug administration.
Not just limit this thing to just one single institution that you find either in the airport or you find in the federal government,
like, excuse me, like when it comes to issue of telecom, we all know that it's NCC. You cannot relate that. When it comes to food, beverages, drugs, it's not
not just the NCC. It is not just the NCC.
No, NCC regulates. No, who else?
For every phone or for every tablet that
who regulates Nigeria?
Of course, you have forgotten that
who gives access
in Nigeria.
What?
You have I say for every product that you put in the market in the area of telecommunication, there are six other bodies that regulate all those.
Who regulates the
I am giving you an example. I will give you an example.
Answer the question.
If, for example, you are manufacturing
forgotten the standard
organization.
Standard organization. I'm breaking down quality of goods and services. But NAFDAC is for food, drugs, and this thing, and beverage issue like beverages. Then when it comes to electricity, there is Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission.
Exactly.
So there are agencies of government that are statutorily set up to look into that. No, the one that under the post privatization era now, that is supposed to protect the interests of consumers is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission.
Yeah.
Is there.
Yeah.
But are they protecting that?
Well, we said they're just, the privatization has just come on board now. But from what I'm seeing, the young man there at the helm of affairs is kind of pushing some level of resistance.
Sometimes see people
but what we are seeing generally, these agencies of government, they are just there, appropriating budget without doing their works.
For 5 years,
that is why you could see,
days, PSN have not given me light, and for that purpose they demonstrate and carry placard and go to the TPN office. Isn't that one form of protecting your right as a consumer?
So as you are now, you are right on the electricity. There are people you are enjoying.
No, I am not saying that. What I'm saying is that even when those rights are detracted from another, you don't get it another. There are ways and manner by which you can vent your anger. There are ways and manner by which you can seek for damages. There are ways and manner you can compare the
major problem we have is issue of legislation.
The supplier or the manufacturer to give you services.
We do not have a comprehensive law that deals on consumer protection in law.
There is nowhere in the world where you ever
you have a
no. Legislation in the area of consumer protection has only been scattered in different legislations. There is nowhere in the world. There is nowhere in the world.
Canada has a law.
Hold on.
They have a law
Gentlemen,
that will
Mr.
protect
Kolawole.
consumption in the area of medicine.
Mr. Kolawole.
That will protect consumption in the area of automobile engineering.
Of 1963.
There is
All
nowhere
right,
in the
gentlemen, we
world.
have to go on break. We have to go on break. When we come back, we'll continue with this conversation.
You have just one
Please
legislation
should not go
to
away.
protect.
Okay, thank you. We're still looking at the rights of the consumer. We have a lot of tweets here. Daramola Grace says, for me in Nigeria, the consumer is not protected. For instance, look at the increase in the price of phone services. In Nigeria, this is a Ayan 1314 at Ayan 1314. In Nigeria, the consumer is the victim, irrespective of the grammar spoken for or against. At his Grace Toba Ash, Nigeria consumers are not protected. You can tell from the GSM how they treat Nigerians with disregard. At Kelvin Fame says, how can we take the communications companies example, MTN, Glo, etc., to court for not satisfying us? You have to answer that. At Nice Plus, consumers are not protected in Nigeria because we don't have a sound judicial system. At Jasper Coker, our laws are weak in Nigeria. No protection at all. Agencies are weak too. At Ogorius, what all the networks in Nigeria are doing about airtime is right. Oh boy, I didn't get that. It's all mixed up. But these are some of the tweets and many more that are coming in, but we can't. Let's get down. You need to answer this. So how can they take the service providers?
Well, it's very basic. I'll just give an example. Not too long ago, a law firm in this Lagos went to court saying that when they make a call and there are drops in those calls, they still find out that the communication providers or telecommunication companies will still deduct their money. And they took what we call this a kind of, it was a collective action that they took to court, a class action, which was being had at a federal high court somewhere in Ikoyi. I wouldn't know whether the case has been disposed of or not disposed of too. Not too long ago, there was also a time in which those who have lost money through fraudulent use of their ATM and other came together and then embarked on a class action, took all the banks in Nigeria to court and saying that the contract we had with you is not that once people misuse our ATM, then we don't get our money back and other. These are class actions that individual consumers could actually take. So the challenge has always been that not too many consumers have the patience. They may also now have the resources.
But what about the
enlightenment?
The judicial system is not sound.
It is sound. It just requires some patience and then a lot of this time consuming. It is not perfect, and there's nowhere in the world you have a perfect judiciary. But by and large, in Commonwealth Africa, I think our judiciary are up to the task.
Well, I would say we have our judiciary sound in that regard, but only that the law, as I said, which we were saying before we went on break, the nature of our law as it is now is very, very problematic. It's solving the issue of consumer protection. Well, for instance, in other claims, I cited instance for India because I've studied India case very, very well. If you see a defective product, maybe a corked bottle that is not open, and maybe you see some impurities inside it, once you see it, that entitles you as a consumer. Because of the emotional and psychological shock, you are entitled to some form of compensation. But here in Nigeria, because of the issue of product liability, where you have to prove whether the person that manufactured owes you a duty of care, you must establish it, whether that duty of care has been infringed upon, and then what are the occasioning harm that it has caused. So even if in the face of glaring case of abuse, by man, you have consumed something, for you to even prove it in court, because of the present nature of our law today, is very, very cumbersome. And this is what some of us have been conversing, that this law, we should take a leave from other jurisdictions.
I think it is not just in the
very, very difficult.
I think it's not just in the area of consumer protection. In all areas of our law, by the nature of our adversarial system, every matter you took to court, you must prove beyond reasonable doubt.
But this, and yet you say and yet you say the consumer is protected by the law.
Oh, sure, he is protected.
With this kind of cumbersome.
Well, it has always been considered. That's what I'm saying. In all areas of our jurisprudence, whether it is criminal or civil matters, you must prove your case beyond reasonable doubt. It's not just walking to court and say the court is not Father Christmas that does this is out sentences or whatever.
Adgar Ibrahim once says the consumer in Nigeria is recognized but not protected.
That's it. At best, we are just
the consumer is protected.
We are not.
It is a different thing than when consumers are not really exploring all those laws, rules, and
We are
regulations
not.
that actually protect them.
We are not.
Because sometimes ignorance could be the problem, and that is where the
Okay,
cost of
so
the matter.
you're saying the consumer's
A
problem
lot of
is
them are
ignorance.
ignorant.
Do you agree with that?
It's
their
part,
rights.
it's part of it.
A
It's
lot
part
of
of
them are
it.
ignorant.
Part
Okay, I
of
agree
it.
with him.
Part of it. Yeah, when we begin to enumerate the problem, ignorance is part of it, and that is why the issue of right to
50%
consumer
of the
education
problem.
is very, very important. But at the same time, the issue of government intervention, as I said, and I keep on repeating it, the consumer is a weaker person in the production chain.
He
This is
doesn't
a
agree with
company.
you.
That is
No,
what
I
it is.
don't agree.
Can
I
you,
don't
somebody
agree
like
in
you
that
now,
area.
come as an individual to begin to find multinational companies? Could you wake up
And
today
see,
and say begin to work?
Mr.
We are
apart
all
from
these
ignorance, you will also have this
telephone
fatalistic
companies
approach to
will
life.
not hire
When
about
things happen to us as an
just
as a person,
like a poor
as
consumer.
a group, and
Can
all
you
that,
come
we
up
say,
tomorrow?
let's leave it to
to
God.
go, no,
You
to
know,
go and fight
you took
a
your
very
child, you took your
multinational
relations
No,
to
how
a
do you
hospital,
explain
multinational
this?
company
and the
like
Are you
doctor.
hearing what he's
Do you
saying?
I am
understand?
hearing
Can
him.
you wake up today and say because one of the, let me mention, not call name, one of the network provider, telecom provider just surcharge you by 50 naira, you go and sue them to court when they have almost about 10 stands waiting for you?
No,
So it needs government
that is not,
intervention.
the court
Government
is always
must
the
come.
last resort.
I
The
know,
court
but
is always the
then
last
you
resort.
there is- you
For
are a
example,
weaker
you can
person.
write a
Let's go.
petition. For
There
example,
is
you
no
can write
way.
a petition to the Consumer Protection Council of Nigeria.
Yes.
And I have done that several times in
And
They
you
are
got a
trying- they are
response.
trying.
Of course, the
They
producer was invited. I won't want to mention their name. We were summoned to Abuja where a panel was set up, and then they had our case and order. And my client was compensated for the injury.
You did it for a client.
I
It's
did
not
it
that
for
the
the
client
client.
did it.
No. The client briefed me.
The
And-
client approached you. So how many consumers
not
out
really.
there
That's
That's
have-
why
what
I'm
we are
saying
saying.
the ignorance is one thing.
No, but how many
That
consumers
the laws are
have
not
the
there
means
is a different thing.
to approach a lawyer?
I think the law
the
is there.
financial muscle
But,
to enforce
yeah.
their rights. How many of them? I give it to Consumer Protection. They have been trying their best. The other day, they took the issue of Coca-Cola, Nigerian bottle, and they are still battling it. But what we are saying that most other government agencies are not living up to their expectation. That's why you could see in some areas of our life, you see crazy billings.
All government
Crazy
agencies
billings.
and bureaucracies
Crazy
and all
billings.
that.
That is what we are
until you
saying.
tap
Should
into
they
that resources,
emphasize
until you
and
trigger
begin
the
to know
laws
that
and say
they are
you
there
want to
protect-
enforce what they are supposed to
protect.
do.
We
They are never
shouldn't
going to
allow
be
it
able
to be
do
so.
that.
That's the way.
You know,
It's not like that in
I don't
other
know
climes.
which government offices you
They
are going
should
to
be.
relay.
They shouldn't
Every
be so.
government office you work into
They
this
shouldn't be
country
so.
today,
It shouldn't be so.
there are stickers in those places that talk
NCA
about Savicom.
NCA
That
is
if you are
a
entitled to
government
services,
parastatal. Right now, if you have any
that you were
complaint,
entitled to services and you
irrespective
don't
of
get
bureaucracy,
it,
they have
then this
established
is
a
the place
desk
to go
at
and
all
make
the
a
airports.
complaint.
Okay.
They have
all right.
established a desk,
All right.
NCA, Nigerian Civil Aviation, where
All
you
right.
can go and lodge your complaint,
Okay.
and it will be treated there and then.
Okay.
They are government
So-
parastatal.
All right,
So
gentlemen.
that's what we are saying. NCC too is doing it at their telecom parliament. Why
It
shouldn't
is not the
Thank you.
NCC, even NAFDAC is there.
All right,
If you
gentlemen.
have complaints,
So
you
that's
can
what
always
we are
lodge
saying.
we'll
it.
have to
Thank
go.
you from them.
You are saying government intervention needs to be.
Of course, that is
More.
the primary purpose of Section 2 of 1999 Constitution. That's the
But
primary
you're
purpose
saying
of
the-
government.
Honestly
consumer has to
speaking,
wake
he has
up.
to be vigilant and be ready to enforce his rights.
Okay, the consumer has to enforce his own
He
rights.
has to enforce his rights. There are more than ample laws and protections for the consumer, but it's another thing whether the consumer is ready to enforce those rights and laws.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tunde Kolawole. Thank you for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure,
Mr.
sir.
Ocheonu, thank you for coming on the
It's a
program.
pleasure having us. I wish,
And you out there,
happy World Consumer
at
Day.
Adams Us says monopoly is one of the offsprings of lack of protection of consumer rights as seen in the cable satellite TV system. I'm afraid that's the much we can take. All the tweets coming here, that's the much we can do. But once, thank you so much for letting us be a part of your evening as a consumer. As they said, know your rights and be ready to enforce them, even though you're praying that the government would intervene as well.
Yes,
All
yes.
right. Thank you so much. Have yourself a good night. I am Nel Taigwe. And up next, at the top of the hour, it will be time for Sports Tonight.